Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Visiting Speaker Series. I'm so glad you could all be here. I'd like to especially welcome some of the Microsoft alumni that made the trip back. We're very happy to see you here in research this afternoon. Our speakers today are Lindsay Andreotti and Brian Helgendorf, both from Brilliance Enterprises. They have both been VCs in the area for many years and recently started this very interesting company. And they're here today to talk to you about your favorite subject, which is, of course, you. And I've just been really interested in much of the work that they've been doing lately and some of the research that they've been doing on how to bring more of ourselves and our personalities and align those with what we actually do for 10 to 12 hours a day in our jobs. I'm sure some of you are probably doing more than 12, but we'll talk about that later. Anyways, please help me welcome Lindsay and Brian.
It's a pleasure for us to be here as well. Brian and I are probably the rare locals. We are locals in the Seattle area. I grew up less than 3 miles from here. So it's pretty cool to be in Microsoft and visiting with you today. The first thing we wanted to do before we start talking about you is tell you just a little bit about us. Brian, you want to tell them about Brilliance Enterprises and why we started this thing?
Well, Brilliance Enterprises is a mentoring and a media company. And that's kind of an interesting combination when you say mentoring and media. I will tell you, when the word mentoring comes up, a lot of people think that that's a coach. Okay? We don't coach. We're not coaches. Okay? What coaches basically do is sit with you and kind of help you set your goals, right? And they'll give you a sense for that. We don't coach. We're certainly not therapists, right? And so you can't think of us that way, and besides you have to have a license and all that stuff. And actually, we're just reformed, well, in some ways reformed, in other ways not. What we really are is a mentoring company. And what mentoring does is what mentoring is all about is it's about reflecting to a person while you're with them, either in person or not, really what they see for themselves in themselves. That's what mentoring is. And you hear that word a lot, and but that's what it is. Media is that we are really here to take something that we call brilliance, which is an integrated model that we've defined that talks about what the whole authentic self is. And there are 4 parts to it, and we'll get to that soon. This model is centric to everything that we do, whether it's in our media or whether it's in our mentoring. So then the question asks is, well, why? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? We are here to start a revolution, and we'll explain that to you. That is what Brilliance Enterprises is. So let's talk about the revolution. You know, there have been many what we call revolutions that have impacted the business climate, right, over the years. We had the Industrial Revolution, right, and that was really just about mechanical and factory automation. You know, what was the innovation Ford brought to the world, right? It was the factory automation, right? It's Model T. And so that had great impact to how business worked. Okay, then we had the technology revolution, right? Another revolution. And what really that did is that brought the notion that you can use, if you will, machines to do a lot of things that humans did, okay? You know, you notice a couple of things that are occurring in these 2 revolutions. The human factor is declining, right? Because we're using automation now, and now we're using technology. By the way, on the technology revolution, Microsoft has been center to that, okay? The next revolution we had, which was much more compressed in time, is what we call the information revolution. And what that really did is that allowed knowledge to become transparent. And I was going to see how many laptops there were in the room. And what I mean by that is that those laptops sitting right there is an example of what I call the transparency of information. Because what's going to happen is we're going to say something, and for all of you that don't have a laptop and are not connected, basically you can't do anything to check us or evaluate it or get additional information. But the people with the laptops, they could do a little search, MSN search to be exact, and they can find additional information. What that means is in the span of time, information is becoming transparent. And with transparency, you allow judgment and critique to occur. Okay?
Real time.
Say that again?
Real time.
Real
Judgment
time.
and critique.
And so again, what you have is you have the human dynamic becoming more and more challenged. So what we want to do, and what we're saying, is that there's another trend coming. And the next trend we call the Brilliance Revolution. And what that is that's about unleashing into enterprise the counterbalance to removing the human dynamic by placing it back into business. The question is which companies will lead this? I will tell you, recently, there was a very large study done at Ford Motor Company. And in fact, much of what we're talking about, they are now installing into their corporate culture. And the reason I pick on Ford in the Industrial Revolution is because, in fact, they were the leader in that, one of the leaders then. It's interesting how it's cycling back after all of these years. So it's the Brilliance Revolution that we're here to start, inspire. Are you ready? Are you ready to join? So that's what we are about as a company.
Let us talk about who we are just a little bit. One of the things that you'll notice right away, I think, is that Brian and I are both exceedingly passionate about what we do. We absolutely love people, and we want people to be successful and to bring all of who they are to work, and we believe that that's actually what's going to change the world. So, and we're passionate, and we might be crazy, and we might sound ludicrous, and we don't care. It's totally fine. This is what we're here to do. I want to tell you a little bit about me and why I'm qualified to start a revolution. Who is qualified to start a revolution? Who is?
Everyone.
Anyone. Anybody's qualified to start a revolution. Pick one. What do you believe in? What are you passionate about, right? We've decided that this is our revolution. We want to change business culture, and that's what we're trying to do with the work that we do. My background has been in human resources and organization development for pretty close to 20 years, and I have spent years in for-profit, non-profit, startups, big organizations, any kind of organization you can possibly imagine. I think I've worked in it, including city government. So I've seen just about every kind of people, every kind of system, every kind of organizational way of doing business that you can possibly imagine. And I've noticed something is wrong. And what's wrong is that we're not connecting with people in business. We're so focused on the outcomes of what we produce that we forget the people. And that's my background, and that's why I'm here. Brian?
So my background is I am an entrepreneur. Certainly over the last 10 years of my career, I've done many, many companies. From the software industry, worked at a company called Aldus, which did a product called PageMaker. Classic accountant finance type, okay? Without a doubt, you know, in my career I've had successes, financial successes, career successes. I've had failures, bankruptcies, lawsuits. I clearly am a product of what we call the abyss, okay? We have this business world that surrounds us that we term the abyss, okay? And so why am I qualified, and why did I partner with somebody who understands the soft side, if you will, of business, is because I come from the very hard side. I was a negotiator, you know. My job for many of the companies I worked for was to get the most you could. And if there was more, get more of it. And if there was still more, figure out how to get all of that too. And it worked very well. When I paused from my entrepreneurial world, I sat back and reflected about the successes. And sure enough, one thing that I came to really think about was, you know what? Even though it worked, it could have been so much more. It really could have been more. We could have done even better than we did if we would have leveraged really all of the people had to give that were in those teams that we put together. We could have done better. Now, the question you ask yourself is, why would I even have that revelation? Well, the fact of the matter is, a couple of the companies that I started don't exist. The products don't exist. We all made a lot of money, right? But we actually didn't leave a legacy, right? We just took advantage of the situation. And recently there was a researcher back east who was doing an archiving and an analysis of the internet revolution, right? What happened with the internet boom, right? And his whole job is just simply to archive data so that 50 years from now, when people go to research what happened during the internet era, that data is available. That's his job. That's what he's doing. Well, I got interviewed by the guy. And so I guess I'm going to end up in some vault somewhere.
Somewhere.
And what was fascinating about that interview is he asked me a question. And the question was, were the people that played in the internet world smart or dumb? That was the question. And I said, there were a lot of people that failed in the internet world. And then all these ideas about how we were going to change business, right? And we weren't going to need retail stores and whatever. I says, but at the end of the day, were they smart or dumb? Here's what I said. I said, I think they were really smart, even if their companies failed. Not because they had a smart idea, but what they saw was that a game was being played. There was a change occurring, and they elected to move into the game and play. Okay? What they did is they took something inside of them, and they made a step toward it. Okay? That's what we're saying. Why can't we have that same environment every day in a company? That's what we're calling the Brilliance Revolution, and that's my background. So the roles, abyss.
So now let's talk about them. That's enough about us. The rest of the day is about you. What we really want to talk about today is a couple of things. First of all, is share with you some tools that can assist you in finding your passion. Clearly, we have roughly an hour and a half. We're not going to be able to find everyone's passion in an hour. But we will give you some tools and some ways of looking at how you can actually discover it for yourself. We're also going to talk to you a little bit about vision and the power of aligning your vision with the vision of this organization and how that works and why it works and how you can actually do it for yourself. And then the last thing we really want to talk to you about is how your professional brilliance or excellence is really a factor of connecting to your passion and your vision. And we would like to encourage you to see that and experience it a little bit today. Okay? So with that, we will move into something we call the Brilliance Dynamic. In the package that was left on your table, or on your chair, I guess, is a card that has this on it, if you want to look at it really close and personal. It's on the back side. Essentially, this is a process, if you will, that every single person, every single business, every single organization we've ever had the privilege of working with has gone through 5 of the 6 steps on this process. And they usually start right here at know your vision. How many of you have been involved in a project where the first thing you did was figure out what is it you're trying to do? What's the vision? What are we trying to expect? Right, you start there. The next thing was know the team. Who's going to be on the team? Who are the best people? How do we make it work? How do we get to the vision? Next step, get a strategy. What will we do? What's going to be our strategic plan for this whole thing? And what are the processes? What is it that how are we going to do this? Okay? And then everybody starts executing, and they go after some results. Notice the step that I missed. Know yourself. What we notice in a lot of organizations is that people are not bringing themselves to the table. They bring their intelligence, they bring something that they do, they bring their resume to the table, but they aren't bringing who they are to the project or to the outcome. This is the area today, right in here and right in here, where we're going to spend most of our time and show you the power of knowing those 2 things really, really well. Okay? So what is brilliance? What is brilliance? Is it just being smart? Is it power? What do you think it might be? Anybody have a definition? You're not going to be wrong. It's okay.
It's energy that's creating more light than heat.
Energy that's creating more light than heat. Nice definition. I like it. What else? We actually chose this word for a reason. The word brilliance is really about creating light. It is about being energetic and bright, right? If you are a brilliant star, you're sort of brighter than the other ones in the sky, right? We have a model of a whole human being that actually describes what it is when you are in your brilliance, okay? The first piece is your intelligence. Everybody in this room is smart. You have a great deal of intelligence. There are actually 7 intelligences that are being studied right now at Harvard, and they're actually thinking there might be closer to 9. And you probably know more about that than I do. But the interesting thing about it is that most people in American business today spend a great deal of their time focusing on what intelligences they can build in themselves. They're primarily focused on intelligence. The next piece of the puzzle in Brilliance is your ego and personality. So how many people in the room have an ego? Okay, all of you raise your hands. Come on. Y'all have them. The ego is actually, it's just psychology science. It's the piece of you that actually keeps you safe. It is the piece of you that allows you to be an individual. It's the thing, your personality, that shows up to the external world that people actually see. How many of you have taken, let's see, a personality test, the Myers-Briggs, some other type indicator? That's typical in American business, is to look at what is the personality of this person and how can we make them fit with other people. Up until now, these have been the two pieces of the human being that most businesses focus on.
So, Lindsay,
Brian.
now wait a second here. What you're telling me, because, being a product of the abyss like I am, the fact of the matter is I sit down every day and I am measured by how smart I am, right? You have credentials. How many of you have PhDs? Anybody? How many of you have master's degrees? Right? How many of you have undergrad only degrees? Okay? Well, which one's smarter? Right? Is it the PhD? Is it the master's? Is it the undergrad? Is it nothing? But the fact is we rank intelligences and the seeking of intelligence many, many ways, right? And I say to myself, well, wait a second, that's exactly right. Because, of course, we all know that if we go apply for a job and if I got the advanced degree, I'm going to get hired over the other guy because the default is I must be more intelligent, right? Now, wait a second, product of the abyss. If I want to succeed in business, everybody has to like me because we all know that in every business it's full of politics, right? So I have to have a personality. I have to have an ego because, otherwise, how am I going to migrate myself through this, this shark-infested water of a business so that I'm at the top end of the heap, right? I mean, it is a bell curve, right? I got to be at the top of the bell curve. So why do I need anything other than my ego, my personality, and my intelligence? It's because that's what gets measured in business. That is true. Today, that is true. Now, I don't know the system at Microsoft very well, but I have to believe that if you take these two elements, that's probably large criterias about how you advance in an organization. It's true. Again, let's go back to one of the things we said earlier, which is, our belief is that in business, what we've done is we've mechanicalized the human factor in business. And a lot of the creativity, a lot of the innovation, and a lot of what we define as the ability to overcome, which you see a lot in small organizations, entrepreneurial organizations, is getting distilled out. So what we're saying is that there are a couple of other elements to the human person that need to be brought to bear. And those are really, we want to make this distinction because what we're really talking about is the other two elements and adding that and really seeing how it not only helps you in your personal passion and your professional excellence, but actually it will help the business. The business itself will get great advantage and leverage out of it as well. And we have seen that happen. And later on we'll tell you a personal story that we've seen happen in that regard.
Exactly. The other two components I will share in just a second. One of the things that I toyed with actually before coming here, this was probably maybe 6 months ago or so, was calling those first two pieces, this is the old operating system, the human operating system that could be equivalent to DOS. Okay? It is what it is. It's been around for a long time. People used it. It was great. It led the way. The new operating system has two more pieces to it. Energy. How many of you, when you go home at night, you feel like $1,000,000? You are so on fire, you are just not tired, you're energized, you're excited. Right on.
Oh, wait a second, I do.
Yeah, I do. I go home and my family goes, what's wrong with you? I am totally lit up at the end of a day. Even if it's been a bad day. What some people would qualify as a bad day. Energy. Your body has energy, it shows it, it feels it, it will tell you if you are alive or not. The way you can see energy is through the spirit and passion. Your spirit, your passion is what makes your body come alive. And when you are touching your passion or your spirit, you feel alive. And there is no way to get around it. You can watch it. Haven't you ever seen it when somebody gets into a passion zone and they're like, whoa, That was kind of cool. What did they just do? It's really fun. And what we're talking about here is being able to bring all 4 of these pieces to work every day. Now, sounds hard, and it is. We're not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, that's the easiest thing to do in the world. But we will show you, hopefully, a couple of ways for you to get in touch with this so that over time you can keep building, one step at a time. This, by the way, Brilliance, is what I call the new human operating system. It's a very robust system that brings all of you to work. Okay? So, click.
So now we also want to call out here for all of you in the room that are now going, yeah, but that whole energy, spirit, passion thing, that's just not, the business just doesn't care, right? That's true in many respects. That's true. We should get lots of head bobs, right? That's why it's a revolution, right? The first thing you do in a revolution is you make everybody aware, right? And that's why a media company is the approach. The next thing you do in a revolution is you recruit members to it, right? And then the last thing you do is you start to do something about it. So that's what a lot of today is about. The other thing we want to talk about here.
I'm going to have him do this right now.
Okay.
On your chair was this little card, and on the inside are 4 panels that have some questions in them. We won't have time today to go through each and every one of these. Obviously, it would take forever. There's a lot of questions here. But what this is it's a very short and sweet way for you to do an assessment of how well you know your brilliance. How well do you know yourself? So do you understand your own intelligences and what makes you really strong? Do you know your personality and ego and what would other people say about you? Are you clear on that? Do you understand your energy and how your body is talking to you and telling you what it wants and what it needs? And your spirit and passion, how well do you know what you want in life? We're actually really fond of using these kinds of questions in the work that we do with our clients. It helps you to really know where you are. And the best thing about going anywhere is knowing where you're starting from. So we would encourage you to take these and spend a little time with them. This will assist you in your journey to your brilliance.
Okay. Now what we'd like to do is to, that's kind of the background of our premise, just about who we are and our background. Now let's get practical, right? It's like, what do you do about it, right? And what we want to talk about is, in this particular section, is this notion about if you will, empowering yourself. But what you really want to do is you want to find a way to figure out yourself, if we go back to the whole plan, how you bring yourself into the dynamic so that you can enhance all of those other things that are classic in a business. The business will get value if those are enhanced by your participation. It's, the line, it's just business, it's not personal. Right? Well, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's personal. I think it's absolutely personal. So what we want to do is create that personal and bring it into the business. That's where the business will get the benefit. Conversely, you need to get a benefit, right? Otherwise, why the heck take the risk, right? And so what we want to do now is get a little bit practical about that. The first two, the intelligences, the ego and the personality, typically what that does is those are things that are used to get what we call needs, okay? And I'll explain that in a second. But really, typically what happens is if you look at needs, there's a hierarchy. And what you use those skills for is typically to get needs, right? A raise, whatever. The other two usually are used to get wants. Because typically, question, who goes tired at the end of the day? The reason that I go home and I'm excited is because that day helped me get where I wanted to go, right? And I'm energized by that. So the other two actually help you get your wants and create the stamina. So what's a need? Or excuse me, what's a want? Wants are things you have in your vision, okay, about what you want. They inspire you, okay? And if you go down into a lot of the other arenas, religion, spirituality, there's lots of other arenas. Inspiration is really common, but they're generally very longer term in nature. I'll give you an example. What would a want be? For me, a want. I want my children to be able to enter the world fully equipped to lead successful lives. Okay? That's a want, right? A need might be, I need to save $50,000 so they can go to college. Okay? They're very, very different. Because how you fill the need would go get a job, save some money, create the money, and enable it. But I'm doing that in order to really hopefully fulfill a want, which is I want my kids to live productive lives. What's interesting is if you go after your want, your needs will typically be met. So what's a need? Needs motivate you, but they're generally short-term. Typical need in a business, I want a raise. So what you will do in the short term is act the way you need to act to get the raise. But what typically happens after you get the raise is you stop acting that way until, of course, you decide you want to get the next raise. So that's the difference between wants and needs. I will tell you, this is a very complex thing. But we can explain it pretty easily with Maslow. You all know who Maslow is, right? He has this hierarchy of needs. And what you have is a physiological safety, belongingness, needs for self-esteem and self-actualization. The higher you go up the need hierarchy, the more it's really about you, if you'll notice. If you lower you go down the need, it's really about basic things. Safety. I want to be safe. I need a house so I can have a dwelling to live in. What we're talking about, and what Maslow actually says, that if you focus on the upper end of the hierarchy, the lower end of the hierarchy actually just happens. Okay? That's all we're talking about. It's that simple. In terms of a practical way that you apply, and the reason you need to know yourself is because you've got to know what you want. If you know what you want, you can do something very, very simple, which is ask for help getting it. Okay?
We're going to do a quick exercise on this just to help you walk away with something. In your packet was another card that's just blank. If you have other paper, you can use that too. Basically, draw a line across the center middle, horizontal line, center middle of the card, and above the line, write, I want, and underneath the line, write, I need. And don't do anything else yet, just do that part. Don't skip ahead. So I want you to start with your needs first. And just think for a moment, jot down a couple of things that you need in your life. Absolutely need them. Have to have them. Can't live without them. No way, no how. What do I need in my life?
I don't have any.
You could have it now. It's fine. If you have it now, great. But what do I need in my life? Hopefully most of you have them met for the most part. Okay. Have a few noted. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to ask you in your mind to rate your life as a whole on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being, my life is absolutely the worst it's ever been on every front. Family, home, whatever. It just is the worst. And a 10 is, I am doing this all day long. It is rocking in all channels. 1 is ooh, 10 is yay. Rate your own life. Just, you don't even have to write it down. You don't have to tell anybody. Just rate it. In the section under the wants piece, I want you to write down what it would take to take your life to a 10. That's what you want. So make a few notes on what you want to take your life to a 10. What would you really want? I'm a genie. I could bring it to you today. I wish. I really wanted to be a genie. What would it take to take it to a 10? What you just wrote down in your wants section, it may or may not match your needs section. It's okay. It may have some congruency. It's okay. It may be completely different. Fine too. The key is knowing what you want. And where we're heading now is into this zone about knowing your vision. Okay? What you wrote down, just some elements, it could have been a blob. I don't know what you put down under the I want. But what you put there is truly a part of your vision. It's part of where you're going, what you are aiming for in your life. And we're going to talk a great deal more about that right now.
Mm-hmm. And then so I just, one of the things we like to do when we do presentations is cycle back, right? So again, we are here to try to drive people to bring their authentic selves to the workplace. We've said that we're a mentoring and media company. Media is about awareness. Let's focus on mentoring. There's been a study, and one of the questions that they asked, successful entrepreneurs or business people, was what are some of the factors that they felt drove them to reach that success, right? Because of course we can look around the room or we can look around the world and we can see that what we would define as successful people actually aren't that much of a pattern, because it's not like that every successful businessman has a PhD, right, or a master's degree. In fact, I think that if I'm not mistaken, even the CEO, well, I guess he's not the CEO anymore, one of the founders of this company, didn't quite make it through college. And it's certainly not that necessarily that it's from their family, right? I mean, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that take over another business or whatever. But there are people that start it from scratch, they come from whatever. One of the things that's consistent though across many successful people in business as well as out, but since we're focused on business, we'll do that, is that they will cite that they had a mentor, right? They will cite that they had a mentor. And I always question, what the heck is this mentor thing, right? Because ultimately, the mentor doesn't do it for you, okay? So one of the things that we also drive when we talk about, well, okay, if we're going to start this revolution and we're going to get practical and we're going to bring our authentic selves, is that you have to find a way to get a mentor in your existence, in your channel, okay? And so one of the things we encourage people in business as a way to help further themselves in their own personal passion and professional excellence is find a mentor in an organization who can help them in that organization. So this is where you go through and you say, okay, well, if you wrote down that one little thing on the want, and you can find a way to share it with somebody, right, in an organization that can mentor you, then you can move toward getting that want filled. It's a whole day workshop to talk about the specifics of that, but that's the general premise. But you can't do that unless you know yourself. And so if you think about a project team, and we won't even talk about a business plan, we'll just talk about a project team, right? In a project team environment, when you go through the classic 5 steps, what you want to do is get something out of that project that helps you move where you want to go. Because if that's the case, and you can do that, your energy to join that team and operate in that team will get very, very high, which means that the likelihood that that project will be successful will go up, okay? This is probably another good time for me to bring another statistic to you. There was a recent study, and I have a question for you. We had this question at lunch. And we'll talk about this nature of team and why it's so important. Randomly, how many people in the workforce do you believe today, what percentage, standard workforce, are looking for a new job? What percentage are looking for a new job?
80%.
80?
60 over here.
60?
40, 30.
90%.
90? 50? Okay, the percentage is 70%.
We will.
He Googled?
He said define looking.
Oh,
did he Google? No, he did not. He MSN searched.
I was thinking, oh my gosh. 70% of the labor force is looking for a new job, okay? 35% actively, 40% passively, okay? So that's the 75%, 75%. It's a math thing.
It's a math.
What that means is that if you're on a team, think about that. Most of that team doesn't really want to be there, right? Some of them really don't want to be there, and some of them are just thinking they don't want to be there. That's the issue in business, right? That's the thing. Why are they doing that? Because they themselves are not getting what they want out of that business, out of that activity. If you can connect people to the activity of the team, the project, the business, and they can see how they're moving toward that little thing you wrote down, that want, then they don't want to leave, right? And so I'll pick on somebody. When we were having this discussion, and I did the same thing. I says, okay, be honest with yourself. And we won't ask you in this room because there's too many people. Which of you are really looking for, or considering looking for a job? And you get a raise hand. And they say, well, which ones aren't you? Raise a hand. And then you ask the question, well, why aren't you? Answer, almost always is because I'm really passionate about what I'm doing. Okay? When you go back into startups, entrepreneurs, whatever, typically what you have is, they always say that, the line that was used is they bleed the company, right? They're so passionate that their blood is about the company. In the early days of even this company, that was very true. That's about passion because they were personally connected. So when we talk about the dynamic and when we talk about the process of business, knowing yourself becomes very critical. Now, again, being practical doesn't help you in the business if you can't do a couple of things. One of them is you just need to know what that is. And so that was the first step. The next step that you have to go through is actually installing yourself and making the other people on the team, if you will, aware of what your wants are. So why don't you take it from here?
Click. You actually have a choice at this point in time in your life whether to be a human doing or a human being. Human doings often react rather than move toward a passion or something that they really love. I am totally a recovering human doing. I definitely have been there like a hamster in a wheel, spinning it just as fast as I can, doing everything that I think is the right thing to do, and not feeling at all fulfilled, and certainly not moving toward my passion, but someone else's. Okay? The other thing about being a human being is that you have to share your true self. That doesn't sound easy, does it? Does it sound really easy to come to work and just say, here I am, take it or leave it? No. It's kind of scary. And if you work in an environment where that's not accepted, or if the environment is a little unsafe to do so, I would not recommend doing that all the way right away. If you are a manager in this room, I would definitely consider how can I make the environment for this team more safe so that I can invite Julia to be her full self in this environment rather than just the person who needs to show up with her brain. Okay? It's a mind shift to create that kind of an environment, and you have to think differently. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. The last thing, and this is probably the most important thing, how many of you have heard of the power of intention, setting intention, being intentional, being conscious? What we would say is that every single day that you come to work, you have a choice. You can choose to be here or not. You can choose to be who you are or not. It's totally your choice. And talk about empowerment. It is the most incredible choice you can make every single day. And I will tell you that when I wake up in the morning, I set an intention for the day. When I set foot into any room, into any meeting with any dialogue, I set an intention for that meeting. When I go to any event or spend any time with any other human being on the planet, I have an intention for what I want. I am very conscious about what I'm doing and being myself, not somebody else, not what they want me to be, just being me. That's intention, and you can choose. Click.
So,
it's hard not having the clicker. I don't like being out of control.
but I'm the abyss, and it's all about control.
It's all about you.
You will make a choice. Which one will you make? So again, let's cycle back. So we're going to know ourselves. We're going to go into a standard business process. Now we have to really, find that manager. We have to establish that relationship. And I am not going to walk into the room and bare my soul right away because I know I'm living in a culture. We're going to try to change the culture, right? That may not embrace this immediately. So we have to be practical, right? Well, what that is, the next step that we suggest is that we call it the power of alignment. And this is a very, very, very specific thing that you do, okay? Because once you know what you want out of your life, which includes many parts, what we call channels in your life, right? What you really want is you have all these channels, right? So I'll talk about myself. I have my business channel. I have my family channel. right, where my spouse and children are. I have my church channel, my community channel, and I live all these little separate lives. And what I mean by that is, when I'm at work, I act one way because I know what it takes to succeed in that environment, that culture. When I'm at home, I act another way, right, because I know what it takes to succeed in that environment. When I'm at church, I act another way because I know what it takes to succeed in that environment. Well, the problem is that I got to lead 3 lives, right? And what we were suggesting is that if you can align yourself to all those channels at the same time, then you just have to live your life, right? What that really means is that you have to establish something with the relationships you have in each of those channels where there's a mutual benefit to you. Now, what I mean by this is that what a lot of people do is that they come in and they say, this is the need thing, I need this from you, right? Well, that's a one-way request, okay? A better way is to go to somebody and say, well, here's what I need. What do you need? And how do we both get what we need? Okay? And that's mutual benefit. That's collaboration. That's not competition, right? It's certainly not being a victim, right, where I need to be taken care of, right? It's about being intentional. You are moving toward what you want, okay? And so what you do is you have to establish the process and the dialogue around getting mutual benefit.
Brian, I think this would be a good place to actually share the Vindhya story for a minute. Just to give an example.
Yeah, for all of you people that have machines. It was interesting. We recently partnered with a situation with a company. And what happened in that situation is that the company existed, and it went out of business. It just didn't do very well. Kind of burned through a lot of venture capital, and et cetera, et cetera. And what we noticed in that situation was that, it was, you'd walk in the office right before they shut down. You walked in the office and it was like, geez, I mean, these guys aren't dead. I mean, they're like 6 feet under and like the dirt's
Buried.
over them, right? And
Buried.
And so what we did is we partnered with the company, and what we did is we helped them actually acquire all of the assets of this failed company, started a new company, and then what we did is we formed a new team, and we brought back one of the predecessors of the company, one of the predecessor founders.
Original founders.
And we started the company, and we did it completely around passion. Okay? So we went to every single person and said, what do you want out of your life? Da-da-da-da. How can we help you get what you want? How can you help us what we want? And we started the entire company based upon that premise. Now, I will tell you it is a recent example, and the jury's still out because it's not very long yet. But there was a very interesting thing that happened. Actually, being a product of the abyss, being in the venture capital world, I personally have been shocked. This company had never made a nickel in its entire existence. It burned through millions of dollars in venture capital. Okay? The challenge we put on the table was, you have no capital, you get no capital,
Virtually
right?
none.
Virtually
Yeah.
none.
Yeah.
You only have who you are, and there are only 6 people. That's all you get. You get no more people. You do get all these assets, right? But you have to deal with all of the headache.
And some customers.
Right? And some customers. And you got 90 days to get profitable.
4 years, they weren't
90
profitable
days.
at
That's
all.
all you get, 90 days. If you can't be profitable in 90 days,
Forget it.
Forget it, because we're not going to have any money. At the end of 90 days, not only were they profitable, they'd stabled 8 months of cash for operations. Now time has gone by, right? And so they made it through that hurdle. And if you will, their first need was met, which is they needed money to survive. Okay? Well, that still doesn't build a great enterprise.
What they did, though, was they didn't go after their need. They went after their want. Mm-hmm. Every single person in that team was actually aligned to a vision. They knew what they were trying to do. They knew what product they had for the marketplace, and they went after that instead of saying, where can we get the most cash?
So then, after the need was met, then they started to build a plan to execute against the wants of the company, right? The vision of the company, not their own personal safety and security, that they would continue to get paychecks. Lots of customers that were a little rough, lots of vendors that had situations. They went to every single vendor and did the exact same thing. Here's who we are. This is all we can do. We understand what you want. Here's what we can provide for you. Had this open and honest dialogue and work to mutual benefit.
Every
except for one.
Except for one.
Which would be a competitor, actually, of Microsoft. All but one, the relationships with those vendors and or customers actually got better. And in one situation, which was highly, highly conflict, I mean, we're talking like off the charts conflict, after they went through the process, the company tripled its order. Right? And what was interesting is that when we went back, being mentors, and then interviewed some of the participants in the situation, what was really, really fascinating is we said, well, what worked, for you guys in this process? Exclusively, across the board, I liked the open and honest conversation. I liked the fact that I could see how I could get what I wanted. Right? They didn't say because I made more money. They didn't say because I could keep my job. They didn't say because I got my product from you for less. They didn't say any of that. So what we are finding is as you start to install this in business and you take the leap of faith, so you and managers allow the leap of faith, at least in a small slice, that this mutual benefit is actually manifesting itself into reality. So that's where a lot of the work we do on the mentoring side comes from. So really you have to focus on this mutual benefit. You have to do that.
So let me talk about how you do it. Yeah, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. You said you had 6 people on the team, and I'm just curious, those 6 people, did you select them based on the fact that their personal wants aligned with the wants of the company?
Correct.
Yes.
We selected them based on personal, not necessarily personal wants as much as personal passion. The wants lead you to the passion, but absolutely.
Yeah.
And what we said is that they had to be in alignment and have a great deal of energy around what the vision of the company was. It needed to align with them so they could see how they could get what they wanted, as well as the business could get what it wanted.
In fact, I'll tell you a story when we started the process. Product of the abyss.
You're proud of that.
Yeah, I am, actually. In the process of actually interviewing, the people to bring into the team, and to make sure, one of them we interviewed, of course, was one of the current executives. Okay?
Right.
Wasn't that good?
That was good.
That was good. One of the current executives. And I sat with him, and, we were talking, and I was saying, well, here's what we want in the vision of the company, and da-da-da-da. And he was very, very clear with me. What he said to me was, well, you clearly don't understand. And says, what I need is a, it would be a 25% raise in pay, and you're going to have to give me 20% of the company, and you're going to have to give me all of the power and the authority, because you have no idea what this business is about. And, I'm going to save you from this
Yourself.
mistake that you're making because you don't really understand this business. That is what he told me. And I went, let me see now. You're on the verge of bankruptcy. You've spent all the money, and you're going to save me. And I looked at him and said, you're not passionate about this business at all, are you? He says, absolutely not. I just need to get a paycheck. And I went, And I said, enough. Okay. Found one of the old founders who came back, same conversation. And very different conversation. Highly passionate about the company, the vision, the products, the customers, making everybody happy. I said, so how much do you want to get paid? You know what his answer to me was? Nothing. I don't want anything. I said, well, that's just not right. Can't do that. We've got to pay you something. He says, no. He says, I think what I want to do is I want, if we get profitable, then, I'll take the money. But I don't want to burden our success by taking the money. He says, what I'm really after, and quote unquote, is I'm really after proving that I was right all along. Right? Because remember, he got taken away from the company in the early days. That's what motivated. It was his passion around what he believed in, and he just wanted to follow it. That's the power of using passion. There's an executive recently came to Seattle and had a speech, and this is a paraphrased quote from his talk, because I can't remember the exact words. And what he said is I would hire a B person in competence with an A person in passion over an A person in competence and a B person in passion any day of the week. Hand goes up. Well, whoa, wait a second. Why would you do that? Wouldn't you want the smartest? And the answer to that, I'm watching time, and the answer to that was because the passionate person will overcome. The passionate person will drive to overcome. And if you want success in your life, as well as in your business, you have to overcome the barriers and the obstacles that are in front of you. And so this whole notion of alignment, where the business can see, you can see. What it does is it puts you in that state of mind where you're trying to go and get what you want. And together you work to overcome the obstacles that are in front of you. That is all it is. It's about intentionality. And so that's a practical step. And what you have to do is you have to then make the step to start that process. And what are those steps?
How do you get mutual benefit? Essentially, the first step is really to know who you are and to share that with other people. So if you know what you want and you can describe it to somebody else, a coworker, manager, whatever, that is step number one. Being just clear about what you want. What are you going after? The next step is understanding what others want from you in order for them to achieve their vision. In other words, what you need to be able to say is, I want to be on your team to go after what you want. How would that look? How could I help you? What do you need? What are you trying for? That kind of thing. Okay? Third step, have an open and honest conversation. This is probably the hardest step. How many of you feel really confident that you can have an open and honest conversation with your manager or, a coworker? It's hard. It is hard to be vulnerable. It is hard to open up. But what we will tell you is the magic that comes from this is astounding. If you can just try it. Try it once with somebody you feel relatively safe with, maybe not your boss, maybe you're a friend or coworker. Just try it. By the way, all these steps work with your spouses, significant others, children, friends, mother-in-laws, whatever. It all works. It's the same stuff.
So on your card, because we only had an hour, on your card on the back side where the Brilliance Diamond is, you'll see some principles on the right side of the card. If you just read these and can kind of internalize them, these are actually behavior positions to have an open and honest conversation.
These are things you can do that will allow your conversation to be open and honest. Let your vision lead, be intentional, release the outcome, follow energy. Those are all things you can do in an open and honest conversation that will help you get to a mutual benefit outcome.
And I think the one that's the most primary is, there's two of them. One is do not judge. And again, remember in the abyss, everything's about judging, right? That's why we rank people. That's why we do all this stuff. The other one, stay curious. Stay curious in a conversation, because that's where you'll find out what the wants are between the parties. And those are the two that we highlight the most. Now, we can't go into any great detail on this because we only have an hour.
Right, and we would normally. But the last piece is to really set your intention. So once you've had this great conversation and have communicated with one another, getting clear about what your intention is as a next step forward. What would that be? How can I set the intention for you to get what you want and your intention for me to get what I want? How does that work? Yeah.
But to recognize that they may not be compatible, and the best thing to do is say, this isn't the right place, and walk away and go find something else.
Beautiful.
And that's why you choose every day.
That's choice. That's choice. What, did everybody hear what she said? She said basically that sometimes the best thing you can do at this point is say, wow, we are not at all aligned. This is not a good fit. What are we doing here? So now, for me to get what I want, I need to go over there. Can you help me go over there? Can I help you go over there? Whatever that looks like.
Let me give you another example of the abyss. Okay? And I love this example, and I've used it many times, especially with executives and companies. So, let's say that you're one of the 35% actively looking for a new job. Okay? And unfortunately, you don't have a war chest to live on for a few months while you find a new job. Okay? We have an interesting system in our business culture across the world. Do you realize it's to your advantage to get fired? Right? So if you actually really want to change, and you really want to go out and look for a job, what you really should do is figure out how to get fired. Why is it an advantage to get fired? First off, you'll probably get severance, especially if you're higher up in an organization. Second off, you'll be eligible for unemployment, right? Because, you're not going to do anything really egregious, right? The whole system is built around taking people that are fired and treating them like victims and they need help. Gosh forbid, if you actually come up to somebody and you say, you know what, this is not working for me, this is not working for you, I'd like to leave, you get no support system. You are not eligible for unemployment because you quit. You certainly aren't going to qualify for any severance plans because you quit. That's just wrong, right? We use the term, that's just dumb.
And we
should be done with dumb, right? What you really want to do is, in a mutual benefit conversation, you'll take the situation where this is not working. You can still be a very active person in a team. You can still bring your ego, your intelligences, your personality to bear and make it successful. You can also ask that manager or that mentor or sponsor or whoever to help you move to a new place. Okay? And why will your energy and passion stay up? Because you just got a mutual benefit. They're helping you move to something that you want, even though it's not where you are. Okay? That only occurs if you have the open and honest dialogue. And when I give that example to executives, they always do the same thing. You know, they all do the old Arsenio Hall. They'll go, our system is not built to encourage those things. What we have to do is we have to realize that and find a way to work in it. And that's what we're trying to do here, is establish and call that out in the business world. So what can you actually do, since we only have a few more minutes left? Oh, question is, are you lying? What can you do?
Basically, it's a review of what we've just talked about. Discover your brilliance. What is it? Who are you? What energizes you? What takes you out of your game? Where's your ego really showing up and running rampant? And where is it not helping you? Where is your passion? Knowing your vision is really important as well. Where are you going? One of the concepts that we share with a lot of people is, if you have something you're moving toward and you know that that's your objective, you're at least aiming at it, when something bad happens or if a hurdle comes in your way, you can actually continue to move toward it, even though that hurdle is kind of hard to get over. What most people do in their lives is they move away from stuff they don't want, but they aren't moving toward anything in particular. And we're encouraging people now to move, just move toward what you want. There might be hurdles in the way, there might be stuff in the way, but keep moving toward that. If you keep moving away from what you don't want without a vision of where you're going, you get what you get. It just shows up. Okay? So know what you want, share your brilliance. People actually do want to help you. One of the things that's really been powerful for Brian and I is when we go out and talk about our passion and what we're trying to do, we'll sit across the table from people and they'll go, you know, I need to help you. I need to help you with this. And we're like, okay, come along, we'll figure it out. People actually really do love to help others in their passion. It's fun, it's energizing. So it's actually a kick in the pants to help somebody achieve their vision. Align your vision with others. One of the things we're going to build is a network that allows people to connect at the level of their vision. So if you have a vision to create the coolest team environment in all of Microsoft, and you want to find another person within Microsoft who wants to do the same thing so you can collaborate, this is where you do it. Align it. Find those people. Go find them. They're there, and the only way you can find out is by knowing what yours is and start talking about it. And then the last piece, choose every day. Choose. Choose to be here. Choose to do what you do. Choose to do what you love. Or not, but choose.
Right. So there is a, I want to call out another piece of science here recently, and this is in what you can do and why it's important for you to go ahead and align with others. There's some authors, a guy named Labovitz and Rosansky, and what they did is they did a study, a huge study of what's really occurring in the business culture, okay, and why they say the power of alignment is so valuable. And what they've said is that many businesses today, and the way that the cultures and processes that exist, especially large enterprises, and you can look at Microsoft and probably see this, is they're very linear, right? Well, the reason that a lot of it's linear is not because it was meant to be, repressive, but it was really meant to install control systems, right? It was really meant to create means by which you could have hierarchy and traditional structures and controls. And not necessarily controls in a negative way, but just controls for efficiency and all of that. Well, what's happened over the previous revolutions is that a lot of chaos has been created, and what they found is that linear processes are being disturbed by something they call the ability to do things simultaneously. Okay? And the term they use is simultaneity. Okay? What they've also learned is that creativity and innovation in a situation where you have the chaos of simultaneity, using linear processes is what gets repressed. And so, with the fact that you guys got laptops and you can go do things and multitask, multi-thread, all these things, is that you have to change the culture to allow simultaneity to exist. Because the fact of the matter is, the external influences coming into the business aren't going to change. right? Thank you, Microsoft, for giving us the technology revolution. Thank you, Microsoft, for helping us get the knowledge revolution going as well. It's actually encouraged that simultaneity to occur. And so what you really want to do for a creativity and innovation, to encourage that, to foster that, is you need to now modify the behavior of the linear processes. And that is done through alignment. It's the power of alignment that causes that. Because it is simultaneous, right? I'm getting what I want, you're getting what you want. And they did a very large study on the power of that with respect specifically to innovation and creativity. And that's how you re-enhance it. And so the reason that we believe that this brilliance revolution is so important is because we really believe that what we need today is creativity and innovation to come back into the enterprises. And that's why we think the human dynamic will be the influence of that, because that's where the mutuality between business and the person occurs, right? It's business. It's not personal. No, it's personal. It's just business. And if we can create that, then we believe that we will get that innovation back. And so what we're encouraging is people in organizations to go back onto the creative and innovative front, move toward what they want. Also encouraging businesses through mentoring and some other programs that we have to allow it to occur, and they will get their benefits. That's all we want, right? So
we're going to encourage you today to join the revolution. Be brilliant. Be who you are. Find your brilliance and share it with others. Get your vision out there so that you can go after it. And you will make a choice. Which one will you make? Thank you very much for having us here today. We will take questions if you have any ideas and thoughts. Question? Yeah?
So, I mean, I totally believe, what you're saying. I actually kind of put myself there, be there, be here every day. But I can't help coming up against the it takes two to tango part of that piece.
That's right.
And I know part of it's always my voice every day, but
what can you do, right? Yeah, what can you do when her comment was, it always takes two to tango, and I keep bumping up against the fact that my partner isn't really dancing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to dance here, but you're not helping me. A lot of that has to do with the challenge of being a leader and deciding whether or not you're really willing to fight that fight or not. Is the thing you're bumping up against actually going to help you in some way or not? And then that's the choice. We all have hurdles to get through and around. The other thing I have found in organizations, I worked in city government, so you know that it's fairly challenging to change things. The one thing you can do is influence people around you who share a similar vision and amalgamate a team. Grab some other folks who are willing to do something that's different, maybe a little unconventional, maybe a little off-kilter, and say, we'd like to try something different, and see where it goes. Sometimes in organizations, there are pockets where you can influence that way. Really, at the end of the day, it's about how you feel about who you are when you walk out the door. Did I do everything I could today to make a difference in my life? Yes or no? And that's for you to decide. But I won't tell you it is easy. Not every organization does want to dance. But I will say this, I have seen miraculous things happen in organizations when just a few people got together and said, it's got to be different. This is not working. And it can change things. I flipped around an entire city organization by being steadfast to the vision that we needed to treat customers, citizens, differently. And I would not let go. Now, they could have fired me. Said, thanks for sharing, but we don't do this. At the end of the day, it really turned out that I found the right influencers within the organization who said, yeah, she's right. I kind of believe in that. And they kept going with me, and we flipped it upside down. It can happen, but it's all a matter of who you want to pull in on it, and do you really want to go after it? That's passion.
The other thing that I would tell you, just from a purely practical perspective, that's the advantage of a mentor, right?
Absolutely.
Remember I made the distinction between coach, therapist, and mentor? Coaches will try to tell you what to do. Mentors will simply reflect what they're hearing to you to allow you to figure out what to do. If you're really stuck and you want to get unstuck, the very first step that I would suggest for any person is just find a mentor. Find somebody you can talk to. And what you want to do is you don't want from them to tell you what to do.
Yeah,
you just
please
want
don't
them
ask
to
for
listen to you
advice.
and reflect back to you, because that will make you very, very, very clear. And I will tell you, for me personally, right, product of the abyss, about 4 years ago when I decided to get out of the entrepreneurial thing, and remember Lindsay had made the comment, moving away from what you don't want. What I really did not want in my life anymore is employees reporting to me. Okay? I was just sick and tired of managing people. And I'm sure for any manager in the room, you can kind of relate to that at times. I mean, I just had it, right? And so I didn't want that. And what I literally did is I moved away from all of that. And man, I became very unhappy as a person. And then I found a mentor, and we had some dialogues. And what I discovered in the process is, what did I really like about being, CEO or CFO or whatever? And what I really, really liked more than anything else is I liked solving really, really complex problems and then mentoring teams to go do it. That's what I really liked. And so then I went through another year of analysis to figure out, well, exactly how in the heck am I going to do that? I mean, I'm in the software industry, and that's where I came from, and geez, it's really about programmers, and I'm a finance guy, and geez, it doesn't really work. It's like, what am I going to do? And ultimately I came down to, really Brilliance Enterprises. And I says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go start a media company. I'm going to write a book. And I went, wow, what's the problem that I wanted to address? I wanted to impact the abyss. Right? Change, complex problem, right? You're all evidence of that. It's by the questions. And so what I did is I moved toward what I wanted, right? Never been happier. Making money? Yes. Having fun? Yes. Relationships around me doing better? Yes. Is it really high risk? Very.
And we got the question, did we write the book? Yes. The book will be out in May. I'm not sure. Should we talk about the book? No,
we will not talk about the book.
We can't talk about the book yet, but it will be out in May, and we'll be sure to let Tam Pesic know all about it. It's going to be a barn burner.
So at a personal level, I'd say find a mentor, have a conversation. At a corporate level, it's really about rallying the joining, right? And creating a unified voice, right, as opposed to a single voice. And then you can dispel it, or disperse, if you will, the vulnerability and the risk. But you can't go into a culture, well, you can, but you have to be careful. You have to be careful.
It's hard. There are people who do it, by the way. Yeah, go ahead.
So you brought up earlier that a very large percentage of people are either actively or passively looking for another job. The question that I had is, do you see a lot of variation between industries and what percentage that is? And the follow-on with that is, in an industry like the technology industry, which is highly volatile, most people would be unwise not to at least be abreast of what's out there, if not actively looking to go anywhere. So does that count as passively looking for a job?
That's a great question. He's asking about the actively or passively looking for a job and whether or not that's across industries. It's actually everywhere. It is not about the volatility of the industry. It is from government. Even people within government want to switch government agencies that they're in. We're finding even moms want to change their kids out of certain preschools because they're tired of the moms that they're dealing with. I mean, it's incredible the amount of shift that we're seeing. But I think what's really interesting about that is there's also another phenomenon, a trend that's going on from the baby boomers exiting the workforce and the new generation coming in. By the year 2010, the gap between the available jobs and the number of people available to fill them is going to be huge. So taking that trend, if I were a business owner, and I am, and I'm going to be looking to hire people, which I will, I'm going to have to be really good to people for them to want to come and work with me, because suddenly the power is with them. If you are educated, if you're bright and talented and want to do what you want to do, you will hold the power for yourself to go truly where you want to go. If you think about that trend as it continues to expand, it's going to be a pretty amazing shift in the workforce, I think, over the next 5 to 10 years. So What we're really saying is as a company, as a business, if you want a financial imperative as to why you should join the Brilliance Revolution, this is it. Hiring people is going to get harder and harder. And they know, most people will know that they can choose what they want. It doesn't mean they're going to hold people over a barrel and say, well, you know, you got to pay me $1 million or I won't come work for you. That's not the case. But they can be a lot more choosy. We were talking to some college graduates, recent college graduates, who, by the way, in their generation are also kind of coming out with this notion of, you know what, I don't want to do corporate. That's not what I want to be. I want to make a difference in the world. I want to change something. And they're coming out with that attitude, and you know, with a few years of experience under their belt, they're going to go off and do that. So it's a very interesting trend that you'll see in people dynamics just on a sociographic level. So,
but also in response to the question, you know, volatility of industries, it's volatile and everything. But you know, is it a good thing to keep your eye open? Okay, the answer to that would be yes, especially if you don't see how you are constantly, every day, that's why it's choose every day, moving toward something that's beneficial to you. Of course, why not?
You should.
Right? Because one of the choices might be, as we saw in the front, someday, to go do the other thing. One of the principles is here is be accountable. What we're calling out is that it's okay for you to do that, but you need to be accountable to the rest of your team. And if they know that you're not getting everything that you need and you're honest and open, they'll actually help you move to where you want if they can't provide it. What we have found, though, in most cases after that conversation, is the team can actually help. And that's why we said, trust us. And you're going to have to, it's a leap of faith. People do want to help you. They really, really do. The human condition, for all of you social scientists out there, is to help. It is actually not to hurt, right? And so people want to help you. I mean, it's just innate in us as humans. So it's not a bad thing to look. It's just the intentionality around it that we're calling out.
I'm going to stop the group session here. Please feel free to stay. I have these folks for another couple minutes if you have some one-on-one questions. Also, if you'd like to hear from them in the future, I have a card reader back there. You can grab your badge and they can shoot you emails if you want more information about Brilliance Enterprises. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you
for coming out.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn the other part.